I guess the way we tell in Southern California that we're coming to a close of Epiphany is that it hits 80 degrees outside. So during the season of Epiphany, we remember that in Jesus, God is revealed to all of us, Jesus, the incarnate Son of God. Throughout this season of Epiphany, we have encountered Jesus' baptism in the River Jordan, Jesus' first miracle at the wedding feast in Cana, Jesus reading from the book of Isaiah in the temple in Nazareth, Mary and Joseph taking Jesus to Jerusalem, where Simeon takes Jesus into the temple and presents him to God. And now today, bringing a close to the season of Epiphany, we hear in the Gospel of Luke the portrayal of Jesus' transfiguration. All of these events eloquently and meaningfully remind us that Jesus is God incarnate. Sometimes when I read Scripture, I like to imagine what it would be like to be present during the events described. This is particularly the case today with Luke's vivid telling of Jesus' transfiguration. I invite us all to imagine that this morning. Imagine being with Jesus as he calls Peter, John, and James to come up with him on the mountain to pray. If that alone would not be an incredible enough experience, while Jesus is praying, the appearance of his face changes, and his clothes become dazzling white. And then suddenly Moses and Elijah appear, and then from a cloud comes God's booming voice saying, "This is my Son, my chosen, listen to him." I would like to think that we all would be in astonished amazement, our attention, our eyes fixed on Jesus. Yet Luke tells us that Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep. And it is only because they somehow managed to stay at least somewhat awake that they saw what transpired. Weighed down by sleep. Incredible. It is this lack of attention that struck me in reading Luke's account of the Transfiguration. Then there is the image of the veil described in both Paul's second letter to the Corinthians and in Exodus. We hear from the reading from Exodus how after Moses had spoken with the Lord on Mount Sinai, and after he addressed the Israelites, Moses put a veil on his face. But whenever Moses spoke to the Lord, he removed his veil. Whether it is being weighted down with sleep or having a veil over our face, the readings this morning speak to what we miss or limit in our relationship with God when we put on our own veil. We all have our own metaphoric veil. When we put on a veil, it's not that we cannot see at all, but that our vision and perception is blurred. What is right in front of us may not be completely understood. Our veil creates a distorted lens from which we see, process, and make sense of the world around us. A veil also creates a lens through which we develop a perspective that informs what we believe, who we like or dislike, what we like, and what actions are good or distasteful. But in doing so, putting on our veil inescapably restricts and distorts our open-mindedness and our ability to see what is fully possible. When I was a young adult, I can vividly remember feeling a deep yearning to have a relationship with God. Despite this feeling, I put on a veil that kept God away, allowing me to disassociate myself from God. My veil was thick and kept me from fully discerning God's love and glory. I suspect I was afraid that if I lifted my veil, God would be right in front of me, inviting me to respond to his love. For Peter, John, and James, their veil kept them from being fully awake to Jesus. For the early Christians in Corinth, Paul was concerned about a veil hardening the hearts of people, thus not fully seeing and experiencing the Spirit of the Lord. Our Epiphany journey is to clearly hear again the good news, the great news, that God is revealed to us through his Son, Jesus the Christ. In Jesus' life and death, the glory of God, his transformative love, is revealed and made available to all of us to partake. I suspect, though, we are all a little bit like Peter, John, and James. We all wear a veil to varying degrees that serves to limit our response to God's love as revealed to us in Jesus. God calls us into relationship with unconditional love. We are called to be fully awake, to remove our veil, and be fully alive and present with God. Lifting our veil with the goal of being fully present to the love and glory of God is not easy. But when we do lift our veil, God's love shines to and from us, and we are fully able to receive God's love and to offer God's love to others. In lifting our veil, we are able to deepen our connection to God and one another through prayer. In lifting our veil, we are led to more fully comprehend how we were able to carry our faith outside the walls of the church. In lifting our veil, we see Christ in the homeless beggar. In lifting our veil, we are able to expand our compassion for those we dislike or are different from us. In lifting our veil, we are able to question our zeal for material things. In lifting our veil, we are awakened to the needs of those around us, and we expand our capacity to forgive. In lifting our veil, we deepen our relationship with God. And we begin to see our responsibility to respond to racism, inequality, and oppression. As Paul tells us in today's epistle reading, all of us with unveiled faces, seeing the glory of the Lord as though reflected in a mirror, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, the Spirit. It is in lifting our veil that we, as Jesus showed us, become loving and healing toward each other and rejoice in the glory of God. In concluding, I want to share with you the following from Brother John Brought of the Society of St. John the Evangelist. I quote, "Jesus clearly intends for us to see clearly so that we can be of real help to other people. We absolutely cannot convincingly proclaim God's love and forgiveness while we remain unloving and unforgiving ourselves." As we come to an end to the season of Epiphany, I pray that all of us will experience a blessed Lent.